The recent attempted assassination of former president and current candidate Donald Trump has shocked the nation and the world. In episode 4 of our presidential assassination series, we're looking at some serious attempts that failed.
President Andrew Jackson.
On January 30th, 1835, the first presidential assassination attempt in U.S. history occurred. After attending a funeral in the chambers of the House of Representatives, President Andrew Jackson was approached at the east portico of the White House by Richard Lawrence, who pulled two pistols from his coat and fired at close range. In a stroke of luck for Jackson, both guns misfired.
Jackson reacted quickly and beat Lawrence quite bloody with his cane before he was arrested and taken away. Incredibly, when Lawrence's guns were examined later, they both worked perfectly. Lawrence was found not guilty by reason of insanity and confined to a mental institution until his death in 1861.
President Abraham Lincoln. After his election in 1861, Lincoln traveled to Washington, D.C. by train, giving speeches at stops along the route. The Pinkertons National Detective Agency discovered a plot to assassinate Lincoln before he could reach the White House. Called the Baltimore Plot, it involved Confederate sympathizers attacking Lincoln at the Baltimore train depot. Lincoln was smuggled through Baltimore on an earlier train wearing a disguise of sorts, avoiding any trouble but being criticized for the move.
In another assassination attempt in August of 1864, Lincoln was nearly shot while riding alone on horseback to the Soldiers' Home, a retreat about 3 miles away from the White House, used by Lincoln as a summer home. At around 11 p.m., the guard on duty heard what he thought was a gunshot. Moments later, Lincoln rode up to the entrance without his customary stovepipe hat. It was later found with a bullet hole. President William Howard Taft.
In 1909, President Taft and Mexico's Porfirio Diaz, who had served 7 terms as president and was running for his 8th, held an historic summit in El Paso, Texas, and Juarez, Mexico. No American president had visited Mexico, which made these meetings a very big deal, and had attracted all sorts of assassination threats and other security problems.
On the day of the meeting, October 16th, as Taft and Diaz made their way through El Paso, Julius Bergerson was discovered along the parade route. He had a palm pistol in his hand. Taft and Diaz were just 3 feet away when he was captured and disarmed.
President Herbert Hoover. President Hoover escaped assassination while he was on a 10-nation goodwill tour of Central and South America, traveling by train. Anarchists from Argentina planned to blow up a bridge Hoover would cross in the Argentinian plains. Fortunately for Hoover, the bomber was arrested before he could lay the explosives on the tracks. Hoover reportedly removed the front page of a newspaper reporting the attempt before his wife could see it.
President Franklin Roosevelt. On February 15, 1933, just days before FDR's first presidential inauguration, he was in Miami, Florida, when Giuseppe Zangara fired 5 shots into a group he was standing with. The shots missed FDR, but killed Chicago Mayor Anton Cermak and injured 4 others. Zangara pled guilty to the murder of Cermak, who actually may have been the target of the assassination. He was sentenced to death and executed just over a month later.
In 1943, Soviet intelligence reported a plan to assassinate FDR, Winston Churchill, and Joseph Stalin at the Tehran Strategy Meeting conference held at the Soviet Union's embassy in Tehran from November 28th until December 1st of that year. Called Operation Long Jump, the plot was uncovered before the mission could be launched. President Harry S. Truman.
In 1947, during the Palestinian strife that occurred before Israel became a state, paramilitary organization Lehigh allegedly sent letter bombs to President Truman and others at the White House. The Secret Service, alerted by British intelligence, intercepted the letters and defused them. The attempt was not known by the public until Truman's daughter released a biography of her father in 1972.
On November 1st of 1950, President Truman was staying at the Blair House while the White House was under renovation. 2 Puerto Rican Independence National Party militants attacked the Blair House, shooting 2 White House policemen in the firefight. One returned fire, killing 1 attacker before dying. The second officer survived. The surviving attacker was sentenced to death, but President Truman commuted the sentence to life in prison. In 1979, the sentence was commuted to time served of 29 years by then President Jimmy Carter.
President John F. Kennedy. President-elect Kennedy was on a vacation in Palm Beach, Florida on December 11th of 1960 with his family when 73-year-old postal worker Richard Paul Pavlik planned to blow up his 1950 Buick filled with dynamite as Kennedy left church. He later said he stopped when he saw Kennedy's wife and two small children that day.
Pavlik had stalked the president, and the Secret Service had been alerted to his plan after the post office intercepted postcards with cryptic messages about Kennedy. While Pavlik waited for another opportunity to complete his plan, he was arrested after his car was spotted. He was committed to the Federal Medical Center and indicted for threatening the president. 10 days after Kennedy's assassination in 1963, charges were dropped, but Pavlik was declared mentally ill and kept in mental institutions until December of 1966. President Richard M. Nixon.
On April 13, 1972, Arthur Bremer intended to shoot Richard Nixon in Ottawa, Canada, but the president's motorcade was moving too fast for him to fire. The next day, he saw the motorcade but didn't have his gun with him. A month later, Bremer shot and seriously wounded Alabama Governor George Wallace, paralyzing him from the waist down. 3 other people were wounded in the shooting. Bremer served 35 years in prison.
And on February 22, 1974, Samuel Bick killed a Maryland police officer during an attempted hijacking of a DC-9 plane. His intent was to crash the plane into the White House, killing the president. He shot the 2 pilots, killing one before police shot him through the plane's door window, and he took his own life.
President Gerald Ford. In August of 1974, the Alphabet bomber, who would eventually be convicted of 25 counts, including murder, arson, and bomb-related charges, after targeting judges, Supreme Court justices, and bombing the Los Angeles airport and bus station, sent a taped recording threatening to throw a nerve gas bomb at President Ford. His voice allowed the CIA and FBI to identify him, and he was arrested 1 day after the recording was received.
In September of 1975, there were 2 assassination attempts within 17 days on Ford's life. The first happened at Ford shook hands with a crowd outside the California State Capitol. September 5th, Lynette Squeaky Fromm, a member of the Charles Manson cult, fired a .45 pistol at Ford as he reached to shake her hand. There was no bullet in the firing chamber, and Fromm was immediately wrestled to the ground.
The second happened 17 days later in San Francisco, when Sarah Jane Moore fired a revolver at Ford from just 40 feet away. A bystander saw the gun and grabbed Moore's arm, deflecting the shot, which hit a nearby building and injured one bystander. Both Fromm and Moore were given life sentences.
President Bill Clinton. On October 29, 1994, Francisco Duran fired at least 29 shots from a semi-automatic rifle at the White House. He had assumed President Clinton was standing with a group of men on the north lawn, but Clinton was actually inside. 3 tourists tackled Duran before he could fire again. When arrested, a note was found in his pocket detailing his plan. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison.
President George W. Bush. On May 10, 2005, President George W. Bush was speaking at Freedom Square in Tbilisi, Georgia, when a man threw a live hand grenade toward the podium. The grenade failed to explode because a red handkerchief had been tightly wound around it, keeping the safety lever in place. The man was sentenced to life in prison.
President Barack Obama. In December of 2008, U.S. Marine Cody Birmingham wrote about his plan to assassinate President Obama as a domestic enemy, fulfilling his oath to protect the country from enemies both foreign and domestic. A search of his barracks uncovered a journal used at a trial to help convict the 20-year-old to 100 months in federal prison.
In April of 2009, a plot to kill the president at a summit in Istanbul, Turkey was discovered. A man with forged credentials was arrested and confessed his plan to attack Obama with a knife, with 3 accomplices.
Then, in November of 2011, Oscar Romero Ortega Hernandez shot at the White House with a semi-automatic rifle. No one was injured, but 1 window was struck. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison.
In 2013, a letter laced with ricin was sent to Obama, and in October of 2018, a pipe bomb was sent to the Obama home in Washington, D.C. Both were intercepted by Secret Service. President Donald Trump.
On June 16th of 2016, Michael Sanford, a British national, tried to grab a gun of a police officer at a Trump rally in Las Vegas, Nevada. Sentenced to 12 months in prison, he was deported after 11 months served.
In September of 2017, Gregory Lengang of North Dakota attempted to assassinate Trump during a rally. He stole a forklift and drove it towards the presidential motorcade, intending to flip the president's vehicle. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison.
And on July 13th, 2024, a 20-year-old man allegedly allegedly climbed onto a roof and shot multiple times at Trump during a rally in Pennsylvania. At the time of the filming of this video, one bystander was killed and two critically injured. Trump was shot in the ear. The shooter was killed by a counter sniper unit.
This most recent incident seems to have hit a chord with people, and maybe it's an opportunity for us to come together. Violence is never an answer to any problem.
It's time to relearn how we can be kind to each other, and remember, we can disagree without hatred. We wish you peace and thank you for watching.
Hey, here's another DragonDen video you might like.
And if you like this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button.
And you can hit the notification bell if you'd like to know when our videos come out.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.